Dust and chains, the twin suns of Traxxas Prime burned the desert world without mercy. Heat shimmered off the red cliffs, turning the horizon into a wavering mirage. Riker Vance walked alone along the dusty road that led to the fortress marketplace. His boots kicked up sand with every heavy step, his gray travel shirt sticking to his back with sweat. The blaster at his thigh offered him little comfort, but it was the only friend he trusted in this lawless place. Riker was not here for adventure. He was here for survival. His ship was broken. The hyperdrive burned out. And without the right modulator, he was stranded. He told himself that he only needed one thing, the part. Then he could leave this miserable rock behind. Yet a feeling gnawed at him, that this planet would demand more from him than credits and bargaining. The gates of the fortress rose high above him, carved into the side of the cliff. Two reptilian guards stood there watching with cold eyes, their forked tongues flicking at the hot air. They did not stop him, they did not speak. They simply let him pass like another piece of dust blown by the wind. Inside, the marketplace was a maze of stalls and voices. Merchants shouted in a dozen alien tongues. Their wares spread out on tables, rugs, or cages. Spices burned the nose. Engines hummed with old power. Strange meats twitched on plates. It was chaos, but also survival, for here everything had a price and everyone was for sale. Riker pushed through the crowd until he reached a corner stall marked with a broken holographic sign. This was the place he had been told about, the workshop of Kragoth. A merchant with too many hands and too little honesty. The creature greeted him with a thin smile, his wrinkled cat-like face and bulging eyes studying Riker with greedy curiosity. "What do you want, human?" Kragoth asked, his forearms already gesturing at shelves of parts. "Hyperdrive modulator Mark 7, Riker said. His voice flat, the merchant's teeth, needle-like and sharp, gleamed in the dim light. "Expensive taste, but I have one, perhaps the only one left." Riker braced himself. "How much?" 20,000 credits, Kragoth purred. Riker swore under his breath it was robbery, but he had no choice. He reached for his credit chip, ready to pay, ready to leave this place. Then he saw movement in the shadows at the back of the shop. A small figure chained to the wall, collar biting into her neck. At first he thought it was another piece of merchandise, but then she lifted her head. Her skin was pale lavender, her hair silver white and tangled, her frame thin, too thin, but it was her eyes that stopped him, cold, large, green, filled with tears and a kind of desperation that burned through the noise of the market. She was just a girl, perhaps no older than a human teenager. Broken, but not empty. Her lips trembled, and then she spoke in broken standard. "Can you buy me and take me as your slave?" she whispered. Her voice shaking, the words hit Riker like a punch, sharp, ugly, and honest. He turned back to the merchant, his jaw tight. "What about her?" he asked. Kragoth waved one of his hands dismissively. "A useless thing, caught from a refugee ship, too weak to work. But some collectors like rare creatures." Riker felt rage rise inside him. He had seen cruelty across the stars, but this felt worse. It was personal. "How much?" he demanded. 15,000, a bargain? Humans always like to think they are saviors, Kragoth sneered. Riker cursed. He had 20,000 credits total. Just enough for the part if he bought the girl. He could not buy the modulator. And without the modulator, his ship was grounded. Without his ship, he was trapped, but her green eyes would not let him look away. Something deep inside told him that this was the choice that mattered. "I'll take the girl," he said suddenly, his own words surprising him. Kragoth's eyes glittered. 18,000. Final offer. It emptied nearly all Riker had, but he paid, the credits leaving him with a hollow ache in his chest. The merchant counted with greedy fingers, and Riker stepped toward the girl. She shrank back, trembling. Unsure if this human was a rescuer or just another master, Riker knelt, his voice quiet, steady. "I won't hurt you." He pulled the hatchet from his belt, raised it and brought it down in one swift motion. The chain snapped with a metallic clang that echoed through the stall. The girl stared at him in disbelief as the collar dragged against the floor. Riker helped her to her feet. She was so light he could have carried her with one arm. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lissa," she whispered, almost too soft to hear. "I'm Riker," he said. "And I didn't buy you as a slave, I bought your freedom. Do you understand?" Her green eyes filled with fresh tears. Not of fear this time, but something close to hope. Behind them, Kragoth's voice slithered back into the air. "She is yours now, human, but you have no ship. No credits and no way out. Perhaps I can offer another deal." Riker ignored him for the moment, his hand steady on Lissa's small shoulder. He knew he had just bought more than freedom. He had bought trouble, and somewhere deep inside, he knew trouble had only just begun, the price of mercy. The marketplace swallowed Riker and Lissa as they stepped back into the boiling air. Noise crashed around them, shouts of merchants, clatter of tools, growls of strange animals in cages. But Riker's mind was quieter than the world. He was still hearing the echo of Lissa's voice. "Can you buy me and take me as your slave?" The words clung to him like dust that would not wash away. He had 2,000 credits left, not enough for the hyperdrive, not enough for safety, barely enough for food. His ship sat broken outside the city walls, a useless husk without that modulator. Now he had something more fragile to protect than a ship. A girl too thin, too tired, too scared. He told himself he had made the worst bargain of his life. Yet every time her hand tightened on his arm, he knew he could not regret it. They pushed through the crowd, Lissa stumbling at his side. Her collar still clung to her neck like a wound. He had broken the chain but not the shackle. He would need real tools to free her, and until then, she carried the mark of ownership like a curse. Every passerby who glanced at her saw not a child, but property, and that burned deeper than the desert heat. "Hungry?" Riker asked quietly. She nodded, her voice too small to use. Riker gritted his teeth and steered her toward a food stall where skewered meat hissed on a smoking grill. "2," he told the vendor, sliding across precious credits. Lissa ate with desperate speed, every bite shaking with hunger and relief. Riker watched the crowd instead of his own food, because something in his gut told him eyes were watching back. Kragath's parting words still rang in his ears. "Perhaps I can offer another deal." Riker did not trust deals, especially not from a creature that traded lives like tools. Yet the merchant had slipped something into his hand before he left. A small sealed case, smooth and cold, with faint blue sigils crawling across its surface. Riker had checked it once in the shadows, and a data crystal. But not an ordinary one. Military-grade encryption. "Sharp and dangerous as a blade, damn it," he muttered under his breath. He had seen enough of the galaxy to recognize what it meant. Carrying this was a death sentence, and Kragath had known it, which meant Riker was no longer a customer. He was a courier, or worse, bait. A shout rippled through the market. Voices rising above the normal chaos. Riker looked up and froze. 3 armored figures pushed through the crowd, their black armor shining with official marks, local security. No, something worse. Their helmets bore the insignia of Hegemony intelligence. One of them held up a hologram. Faces flickered across it. Criminals, fugitives, smugglers. Then Riker saw his own face shining cold and sharp in blue light. Time slowed. His heart kicked against his ribs. Lissa saw it too, her small hand crushing his sleeve, her green eyes wide with fear. "Stay close," he hissed, already guiding her away, deeper into the maze of corridors. They ducked into a narrow alley that stank of oil and waste. The armored figures moved the other way, but Riker knew it was only a matter of time before they circled back. He needed cover, a place to breathe, a place to think. He pushed through a low doorway into a tavern thick with smoke and alien voices. It smelled of sour liquor, sweat, and secrets. He chose a corner booth in the shadows, sitting where he could watch the door. Lissa slid in beside him, shrinking smaller. As if she could vanish into the wall, a server came. A creature with translucent skin showing its veins and organs like a map of nightmares. "Drink," it gurgled. "Water, both," Riker said. He needed his head clear. The creature shuffled away, leaving silence heavy around them. Riker's hand rested on the table, near but not on his blaster. He scanned the crowd, every instinct telling him something worse was coming. And then he saw her. At the bar stood a tall figure, cloaked and hooded. She was not drinking, not speaking, only watching. When their eyes met, she moved, crossing the floor with fluid grace. "Mind if I join you?" Her voice was melodic, calm, dangerous. Before Riker could answer, she sat opposite, lowering her hood. Bronze skin that seemed to glow even in the dim light, high cheekbones, amber eyes that caught and held his, hair black as night, decorated with tiny beads that chimed softly when she moved. She looked like no one else in this filthy tavern, and that made her even more dangerous. Riker's hand slid closer to his weapon. "I don't recall inviting company," he said flatly. "You didn't," she replied, her smile sharp as a blade. "But when I saw an Alayan child in this cesspit, I knew I had to intervene." Her gaze shifted to Lissa, and her expression softened. "I knew your people," she said gently. Before the destruction, Lissa's breath caught, her lips parted. You knew Alliance, she whispered. The woman nodded, her eyes shining with something like sorrow. I was a liaison. I tried to help survivors. Then her gaze cut back to Riker hard again, which makes me very curious how one ended up chained in a market beside a human mercenary. I'm not a mercenary, Riker growled. And I didn't capture her, I freed her. She speaks truth, Lissa whispered, her voice trembling but firm. He saved me. He spent everything. The woman studied Riker again, and something changed in her eyes. Amber light sharpened, deepened, searching for something in him. Interesting, she murmured, almost to herself. Most humans would not make that choice. I'm not most humans, Riker shot back. Though the way her gaze held him made his pulse quicken. The woman leaned forward, her cloak brushing the table. You're in more danger than you realize, she whispered. Her voice low, her scent like spice and heat. The merchant set you up, he uses couriers like you, then sells them to the Hegemony for reward. Riker's jaw tightened, his hand finally resting on his blaster. And how do you know that? Because I've been hunting him for months, she said. And now that you carry his poison, you need me. Riker wanted to deny it, to stand and walk away, but outside were armored hunters and inside was a data crystal that could burn whole worlds. Beside him was a girl who had begged to be bought like a slave, and across from him was a woman whose eyes made him forget his breath. And for the first time, Riker realized mercy was not the price he had paid. It was only the opening bid, the spy with amber eyes. The tavern's smoke hung heavy, curling around dim lights and broken faces. Riker sat tense, his blaster a shadow under the table. Lissa pressed close to his side, her eyes darting. The bronze-skinned woman with amber eyes leaned forward, her gaze never leaving his. You've been carrying death in your pocket, she said softly. And the hunters outside already smell it. Riker's jaw tightened. What do you want? Her smile curved like a blade. To keep you alive, if only because what you carry matters more than you know. She tapped the table with one slender finger. Each tap deliberate. That data crystal contains proof of war crimes. The words dropped between them like stones in water. Ripples spreading. Whose war crimes, Riker asked, though part of him already knew. The Hegemony, she whispered. Your merchant stole it from a coalition courier, then made you his mule. Riker's heart thudded, his suspicion hardening into fury. So it was true. Kragath had set him up, not only to lose his credits, but to lose his freedom, maybe his life. Lissa's small hand clutched tighter at his arm, her green eyes wide. The Hegemony destroyed my world, she said. Her voice shaking, the woman nodded slowly, pain flickering through her amber eyes. Yes, child, and now this crystal proves how they did it. Why tell me any of this, Riker growled. I don't even know your name. She straightened, the beads in her hair chiming like soft metal rain. I am Nara, operative of the Galactic Coalition. The words hit him like another blow. The Coalition was a ghost story whispered in spaceports, a resistance network that struck shadows and vanished. You expect me to believe that, Riker asked. Suspicion coiled tight in his voice. Believe or not, human, the truth is the same, she replied calmly. You carry the Hegemony's greatest secret, and they will kill worlds to silence you. Before he could answer, the tavern door burst open with a metallic crash. 3 armored enforcers stormed in, their rifles sweeping across the room. Conversations died instantly. The bar went silent, every eye lowered. The lead soldier barked a command in guttural speech, projecting Riker's face into the air with a flick of his wrist. Patrons turned away, but a few eyes darted nervously toward the corner booth. Riker swore under his breath. They're here. Nara's voice dropped to a whisper. Follow me. Now, she stood with grace that seemed impossible in such danger, sweeping her cloak around her shoulders. Stay close, Riker ordered Lissa, his hand steady on her back as they slid out behind Nara. The enforcers scanned the room, their helmets whirring as sensors swept for human heat signatures. Riker's pulse pounded, every step feeling like it would be his last. But Nara moved as if shadows bent to her will, leading them through a side door just before the soldiers turned their way. The alley outside was narrow, dripping with pipes and shadow. Nara pressed a hand against the wall, her fingers dancing across hidden controls. A section of stone slid aside, revealing a dark passage. Inside, she hissed, her amber eyes flashing urgency. Riker hesitated only a second, then pushed Lissa through and followed. The wall sealed behind them, shutting out the noise of pursuit. Plunging them into cool silence, the passage twisted downward, lit only by faint strips of bioluminescent growth. Lissa stumbled, exhausted, and Riker lifted her into his arms. "You're good with her," Nara said quietly, walking ahead, her cloak brushing the walls. "Just doing what anyone would," Riker muttered. "No," Nara replied, her voice firm. "Not anyone. Especially not in a place like this." They emerged into a chamber carved into the rock, its interior startlingly different from the squalor above. Comfortable seats, shelves of data, weapons neatly stacked, communication consoles humming with quiet power. It was a safe house, a nest of secrets. Nara swept an arm gracefully. "Welcome to my refuge." Riker laid Lissa on a soft cot, watching as the girl sank into sleep almost instantly, the weight of exhaustion dragging her down. But for once, her face peaceful, Nara knelt beside the cot, fingers working at the collar still locked around Lissa's throat. She pulled a compact tool from her belt, sparks dancing as she teased at the mechanism. With a soft click, the collar sprang open, falling away to reveal bruised lavender skin. "Poor child," Nara murmured, brushing silver hair from Lissa's face. "No child should bear chains." Riker's chest tightened, a mix of anger and relief stirring inside him. "Thank you," he said simply. His voice lower than usual, Nara turned to face him, her amber eyes catching the dim light, holding his gaze longer than comfort allowed. "You're not what I expected from a human," she said softly. "Your kind is known for greed. For conquest," Riker shrugged, his mouth dry. "Maybe you've been listening to the wrong stories." The silence between them thickened, charged as if the air itself leaned closer. Then the console in the corner flared to life. An alarm shrieking in warning, Nara sprang to her feet, her expression sharp and cold again. "They found us," she snapped, pulling a sleek rifle from the rack, tossing another weapon toward Riker on the console screen. An image flickered, not just patrol soldiers, but a full tactical squad breaching lower tunnels. And worse, a face appeared in the feed, a reptilian snarl framed by copper-scaled armor. "Admiral Drellock," Nara whispered, her voice hard with dread. "He came himself." Riker gripped the weapon, his stomach sinking like a stone. "Who the hell is that?" he asked, though the answer was already written in Nara's eyes. "The butcher of 3 civilizations," she said, her tone steel. "And now he wants you." The chamber shook as an explosion rumbled through the stone, dust raining from the ceiling. Lissa stirred on the cot, whispering in her sleep, her empathic senses twitching with danger. Nara's amber eyes locked on Riker's, fierce and unflinching. "We don't have much time, human," she said, her voice like fire. "If you stay, you die. If you run, you live. But if we fight, we might change everything." Riker looked down at the girl sleeping beside broken chains, then back at the woman whose eyes carried both truth and temptation. He felt the weight of the crystal in his pocket, heavier than any weapon, heavier than any debt. His life had been simple once: credits, jobs, a ship, a horizon. Now it had turned into this. A war he had not chosen, but one that had already chosen him. The wall shook again, louder this time, boots clanging closer, blasters whining hot. Riker lifted the rifle, his jaw hardening. "Then we fight," he said, voice steady as steel. And the fortress of Traxxas Prime trembled as if it knew a storm had just begun. Fire in the shadows. The walls trembled as the fortress groaned under the assault. Dust rained from the ceiling, consoles flickered, alarms wailed in high, broken tones. Riker braced himself against the shaking stone, his rifle steady in his hands. Nara moved like fire, sleek and focused, her amber eyes fierce, her cloak falling away to reveal a suit of armor that clung to her bronze frame like living metal. "They're cutting through the lower passage," she barked, sliding into position near the door. Her voice was steady, but the tension in her jaw betrayed the danger. Riker checked his weapon again, his heart hammering against his ribs. He wasn't a soldier, but survival had taught him how to fight, and now, for the first time, he wasn't just fighting for himself. On the cot, Lissa stirred, her green eyes snapping open, wide with fear. "They're close," she whispered, clutching the blanket to her thin frame. "I can feel them." Her words sent a chill through Riker. The way she said feel, not hear, not see him, but feel. "What do you mean?" he asked quickly. Crouching beside her, her voice trembled. "Their hate, their hunger, it's sharp like knives. They're coming fast. Nara's head snapped toward the girl, surprise flashing across her face. She's empathic, Nara said sharply. That's why the Hegemony wanted her. That's why they burned her world. Riker froze, realization hitting him like a shock. They destroyed her people because of this. Yes, Nara said grimly, leveling her weapon at the door. A Leon can sense truth and bend emotions. The Hegemony fears what they cannot control. A deafening blast tore through the passage door, the stone cracking, flames licking the edges, figures pushed through smoke, armored soldiers, visors glowing red, rifles spitting fire. Riker ducked behind the overturned table, pulling Lissa down with him, blaster bolts searing past his head. Nara returned fire with precise, deadly shots, her movements graceful and lethal. The chamber became a storm of light. Sound and heat, Riker, Lissa cried, clutching his arm. I can help. No, he barked, shoving her lower. Stay down. I can push them, she insisted, her small body trembling. Make them afraid. Make them break, her words chilled him. But her green eyes burned with a desperate certainty. Can you do it without hurting yourself? Nara demanded over the roar of gunfire. Lissa nodded once, firm despite her shaking. Yes. Just give me a moment. Riker and Nara shared a look across the chaos and a silent agreement. Cover her, Riker shouted. Firing in controlled bursts, Nara moved like lightning, cutting down 2 soldiers who charged through the breach. Lissa closed her eyes, her lips trembling as she whispered words in her native tongue. Soft and broken, the air shifted. It was not sound, not sight, but a feeling that rolled across the chamber. The soldiers stumbled, their disciplined fire faltering, their movements jerking. One dropped his rifle, his breathing ragged, another backed away, panic flooding his eyes behind the visor. Even through the helmet, the fear was raw, primal, choking. Riker's skin prickled, the air heavy with emotions that weren't his. He felt it too, the edge of terror scraping at his mind. But somehow it bent around him, leaving him standing. He looked at Lissa, her small hands clenched, her body shaking, but her power radiating like fire. Her voice broke as she whispered. Go, Riker surged from cover, his rifle spitting light, cutting down stunned soldiers before they could recover. Nara moved with him, swift and deadly, her amber eyes blazing. Together they swept the chamber, driving the invaders back through smoke and flame. When the last soldier fled, screaming as Lissa's terror burned through his mind, silence fell heavy and strange. Lissa collapsed, her body limp. Riker caught her, lifting her small frame into his arms. You're burning yourself out, he muttered, anger and worry twisting his voice. Her lips trembled. I just wanted to help. Riker's chest tightened as he pulled her close. You did more than help, kid, you saved us. Nara lowered her weapon, breathing hard, sweat shining on her bronze skin. She looked at Riker and Lissa together, and something softened in her eyes. That's why they fear her, she said quietly. Not because she's weak, but because even a child can shatter their control. The console crackled, a new feed lighting up. Admiral Drellock's reptilian face filled the screen, his copper scales gleaming under command lights. His cold eyes narrowed as he spoke, his voice calm and venomous. Human, he hissed. You think you've saved something, but all you've done is paint a target on your back. He leaned closer, his teeth sharp and glinting. The girl belongs to us, the crystal belongs to us, and soon your very soul will belong to us. The screen went black, leaving silence heavy as stone. Riker's grip tightened on the rifle, his teeth grinding. I'm done running, he growled, his eyes burning with fury. Nara's amber gaze met his, steady and unflinching. Then you've chosen the same path as me. The ground shook again, another explosion rumbling closer. Lissa stirred weakly in his arms, whispering words that made his blood run cold. They won't stop, not until everything burns. Riker looked from the girl to the woman, from the weight in his pocket to the weapon in his hand. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about survival. He was thinking about war. The fight was no longer about a broken ship, no longer about one man's freedom. It was about a girl who should never have been chained, about truths buried in fire, and about what it meant to be human when the galaxy demanded surrender. And as the fortress shook with another wave of fury, Riker Vance made his choice. He would not surrender. Not today, not ever. Chains of truth. The smoke had barely cleared when Nara pulled Riker toward the comms console. Her amber eyes burned with urgency, her voice low and sharp. They will swarm this sector within the hour. We cannot wait. Riker tightened his grip on Lissa, the girl's head resting against his chest, her breathing shallow but steady. Then tell me what the hell we do, he snapped, his patience frayed. Nara's gaze flicked toward the sealed case in his pocket. The cursed crystal that had dragged them into this storm. That crystal must reach the Coalition, she said. It is proof the Hegemony engineered the destruction of entire worlds. Including hers, her words hung in the air. Heavy with fire and sorrow, Riker's jaw clenched. And you expect us to fight our way through an entire fortress to deliver it? Nara's lips curved into a grim half-smile. Not fight, infiltrate, she moved to a side wall, pressing her palm against a hidden scanner. A section of stone slid aside, revealing a maintenance tunnel narrow and dark. This leads toward the central hub, she explained. Admiral Drellock will set his command there, close to the communication spires. Riker's stomach sank. You want to walk into the Viper's nest? Exactly, Nara replied, her amber eyes steady. Because it's the only path out, Lissa stirred in his arms, her voice faint but certain. They'll be waiting for us, she whispered. But I can feel cracks in their fear. I can push harder next time. Riker's chest tightened at her words, her courage far bigger than her thin frame. You almost broke yourself back there, he reminded her sharply. I won't let you burn out. Her green eyes lifted to his, shimmering but unyielding. If I don't use my gift, we all die, she said simply. If I use it, maybe we live. For a moment silence filled the chamber, broken only by the distant rumble of explosions. Riker looked at Nara, saw the same conflict in her eyes, the same fear of placing too much on a child's shoulders, yet they both knew she was right. He exhaled slowly, setting Lissa gently on her feet, his voice rough. All right, kid. But you follow my lead. If I say stop, you stop. She nodded once, solemn as an oath. The three of them moved into the tunnel. Darkness swallowing them, the path twisted like a snake. Lit only by faint blue bioluminescence, Riker carried his rifle ready, every step heavy with the weight of unseen eyes. Nara moved ahead, her hand brushing the wall, every motion precise and silent behind them. The fortress groaned with the chaos of troops pouring in. But down here, only the echo of their own breaths followed them at last. The tunnel opened into a grate overlooking a wide corridor. Below, armored squads marched, their boots pounding in unison. Among them strode Admiral Drellock himself, copper-scaled, towering, his very presence bending the air around him. Lissa pressed her face against the grate, trembling, her whisper like frost. He's here. Her small hands curled into fists. His emotions, cold, empty. But behind it, rage so big it drowns everything else. Riker pulled her gently back, his voice hard but quiet. Don't touch his mind, not now. He'll feel it. Nara nodded in agreement, her face pale in the dim glow. Admiral Drellock is no ordinary foe. He has survived assassins, poisons, wars, even psychic attacks. He is more dangerous than you can imagine. Her amber eyes fixed on Riker. If he learns you carry that crystal, he will tear the fortress apart stone by stone. They slipped deeper through service shafts, emerging into a narrow hall buzzing with energy conduits. Nara pulled a small device from her belt, placing it against a panel. We need intelligence before we strike, she murmured. The crystal proves their crimes, but we need his movements to escape. The device blinked green, downloading streams of encrypted data. On the screen, images flickered, maps of fleets, records of massacres, plans for new purges. Riker's stomach turned as faces appeared. Civilians, children, entire colonies marked for extermination. This is genocide, he muttered, fury rising in his throat. Nara's jaw tightened. And now you see why the Coalition fights. A sound echoed behind them, soft but certain, boots on metal drawing closer. Nara cursed under her breath, slamming the panel shut. Hide, she hissed, pushing Riker and Lissa into the shadows behind stacked crates. Moments later, two Hegemony officers entered, their voices guttural, their words sharp with contempt and human courier. Admiral wants him alive. Bait for the traitors. Riker froze, his blood running cold. They weren't just hunting him, they expected him. The officers stopped inches away, one tapping the crate with a clawed hand. Lissa's breathing hitched, fear trembling through her small frame. Riker squeezed her hand, whispering low, "Stay calm, don't push." Not yet. But her eyes widened, green fire glinting. "They're going to call reinforcements," she whispered. "If they leave, more will come." Nara's amber eyes flicked between them, a silent question. Riker's pulse thundered. Let the girl use her gift and risk breaking her again, or do nothing and be discovered. It was a choice without mercy. Before he could answer, Lissa stepped forward from the shadows. Her small voice ringing sharp, "Run," she whispered. But the word carried power like thunder. The officers staggered, their eyes widening with sudden terror. One dropped his weapon, the other shrieked, bolting down the corridor as if fire hunted him. Their panic echoed long after their boots vanished. Silence fell again, broken only by Lissa's ragged breathing. She swayed, and Riker caught her, his anger sharp. "Damn it, kid. You can't just—" Her whisper cut him off. "I saved us." He looked down at her, fury clashing with pride, his throat thick. "You did," he admitted, pulling her against him. "But don't ever risk yourself without me again." Nara watched them both, her expression unreadable, yet her amber eyes softened. "Every time she uses that gift, the Hegemony will feel it," she said gravely. "And now Drelok will know his prey is close." As if summoned, the alarms blared louder. Red lights flaring through the corridors, a cold, mechanical voice boomed across the fortress. "Human intruder detected. Secure all exits, alive if possible. Admiral Drelok commands it." Riker's grip tightened on his rifle, his free hand holding the girl's shoulder. Nara raised her weapon, her face carved from stone. They were no longer shadows slipping through cracks. Now the fortress itself was a trap. Walls closing in, soldiers swarming like ants, and Admiral Drelok was waiting at the center. The Admiral's cage. The alarms screamed through the fortress. Red light flashing in jagged bursts, Riker ran through narrow corridors. His boots hammering steel, Lissa clutched close against him. Behind, Nara fired short bursts, cutting down guards that closed in like predators. Every turn led to more armored figures. Every hallway seemed narrower than the last. The fortress had become a cage, and the hunters knew their prey. "Left," Nara shouted, dragging him through a service hatch. They stumbled into a storage chamber, crates stacked to the ceiling. Riker pressed Lissa against the wall, his breath ragged. "We can't keep running," he hissed. "They'll corner us." Nara's amber eyes blazed. "We reach the central hub or we die in these tunnels." But before they could move again, the floor beneath them shuddered. Panels split open, nets of energy erupted upward. Wrapping them in burning light, Riker swore, trying to blast the trap, but his rifle sparked uselessly against the shimmering weave. In seconds, they were dragged to their knees, weapons yanked from their hands by magnetic grips. Above, hidden doors opened and armored soldiers poured in like a tide. Rifles raised, a voice followed, calm and venomous, echoing through the chamber. "Enough running." The soldiers parted as Admiral Drelok entered, his copper scales gleaming under the pulsing red lights. Tall, broad, his very presence crushed the air. His reptilian eyes locked onto Riker with cold fascination. "So," Drelok hissed, circling slowly, "the human who buys a slave child instead of saving himself." Riker spat blood from a split lip, glaring up at him. "Better than being a monster in polished armor?" Drelok's mouth curved, not into a smile but into something colder. "Your kind amuses me," he said softly. "Humans resist chains not because of strength, but because of stubborn ignorance." He crouched, his scaled face inches from Riker's. "That ignorance spreads, poisons other species, makes them believe they deserve freedom." He straightened again, gesturing, and a soldier shoved Lissa forward. The girl stumbled, fear flashing in her green eyes, but she stood, trembling yet defiant. Drelok's gaze lingered on her, his tongue flicking once, tasting her fear. "An alien child," he murmured. "Your people were fire too dangerous to keep alive, and now one ember remains." His cold eyes shifted back to Riker. "Tell me, human, how does it feel to watch her suffer because of your compassion?" Riker's fists clenched until his knuckles bled, rage burning hotter than fear. "I'll tell you how it feels," he growled, his voice shaking. "It feels like the end of you." The soldiers laughed harshly, but Drelok only tilted his head, curious. "You believe defiance matters," he said, his voice smooth as poison. "One man, one child, one spy." His eyes flicked to Nara, who was held at blaster point, her face pale but unbowed. "The Coalition thinks shadows can wound an empire, but shadows vanish when the sun rises." Nara met his gaze with steel. "Empires fall when their lies are burned by truth." Drelok's tail lashed once, striking sparks against the floor. "Truth is meaningless if no one survives to speak it," he hissed, His clawed hand snapped and a soldier held up the sealed case. The crystal glowing faintly within, Riker's stomach sank. They had taken it. The proof of genocide. The reason for this entire nightmare. You carried this like a fool, Drelok said almost gently. And now you will die for it. Not before the galaxy sees it, Riker shot back, forcing the words through clenched teeth. Drelok's eyes narrowed, suspicion flashing. What have you done? Nara's lips curved into a razor smile despite the blaster at her head. Downloaded everything to the fortress feeds, she said, her voice sharp with triumph. The Admiral's soldiers stiffened, confusion flashing through their ranks, and for the first time Drelok's composure cracked, his copper scales flaring darker. Lies, he snarled, though the word trembled with fury. No one will believe them. They don't need to believe, Nara replied. They only need to see. The chamber shook as shouts echoed down the halls, guards turning on each other, slaves breaking chains, chaos spreading like fire. Lissa's eyes widened, her voice trembling. It's happening, they're feeling it, courage is spreading. Drelok turned, his voice thundering. Seal the spires, purge every level, drown this rebellion in blood. But Riker's voice cut through, steady and defiant. You're finished, Admiral. Because every time you try to chain the weak, more will rise against you. Drelok's eyes burned, his clawed hand tightening into a fist. Then I'll start by breaking you, he snarled. Stepping forward, the soldiers yanked Riker to his feet, forcing him to his knees before the Admiral. Nara struggled against her captors, fury twisting her face. Lissa cried out, her small voice breaking. Stop! The air shivered, a ripple, invisible but sharp, and the nearest soldier dropped his weapon, eyes wide with sudden terror. Another staggered, clawing at his own helmet. Drelok froze, then slowly turned his head, his reptilian eyes locking on Lissa. So, he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. The ember still burns. He crouched, staring into her green eyes, his forked tongue flicking. Show me your fire. Child, Riker's heart thundered, fear and rage colliding. Don't you dare, he growled. But Lissa stood trembling, her fists clenched. Her whisper cut the air like a blade. I am not your slave. For the first time, Drelok flinched, his pupils narrowing to slits. The soldiers shifted uneasily, glancing between Admiral and child, the fear Lissa projected already crawling into their bones. Riker surged forward, tearing against the restraints, his voice raw. You hear that, Drelok? She's free. And that's what will destroy you. The Admiral's roar shook the chamber, a sound like fire and stone colliding. With one swift motion, he backhanded Riker across the face, the blow sending him crashing to the floor. Blood filled Riker's mouth, but he spat it out with a grim smile. You'll have to do better, he rasped. Drelok's eyes blazed with cold fury, his tail lashing like a whip. Very well, human, he hissed. Tomorrow the galaxy will watch you die. And with you their hope. He turned to his soldiers, his voice a storm. Take them to the cages. Chains snapped tight, cold metal biting into wrists and throats. And as they were dragged into the dark, the Admiral's laughter followed, deep and merciless. But in the shadows of the fortress beyond the Admiral's command, rebellion was already spreading like wildfire. The crystal's truth burned on every display, whispers of freedom rising. And though Riker, Nara, and Lissa were bound, their fight was far from over, because chains could hold bodies, but never the fire inside them. The ember ignites, the cages were cold, iron bars humming with energy. Riker sat chained, his head bowed, blood drying on his jaw. Across from him, Nara leaned against the wall, her amber eyes sharp despite the bruise darkening her cheek. Beside Riker, Lissa lay curled on the floor, her small chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. The silence pressed heavy, broken only by the distant roar of riots shaking the fortress. They'll kill us at dawn, Riker muttered, his voice rough. No, Nara said firmly, her words like steel. They want a spectacle. They'll wait until every screen in the sector is watching. Riker's fists clenched, chains rattling. So we have hours to break out. Nara's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. Less if you trust me, before he could ask. The walls shuddered again, a boom echoing through the stone. Shouts rang out. Blaster fire cracked, the rebellion spreading closer. Riker lifted his head, his eyes meeting Nara's. That your plan? He asked. Her amber eyes gleamed. I planted seeds before we were caught. Allies in the shadows waiting for a spark. As if on cue, The door hissed open, not with soldiers, but with a gaunt alien rebel, his forearms carrying stolen rifles. He tossed one toward Riker, his voice low. Time to rise. Riker caught the weapon, fire flaring in his chest. About damn time, but before they could slip free, a shadow loomed at the far end of the hall. Admiral Drellock himself, copper scales glinting under the red alarms. Behind him marched a wall of armored guards, their rifles raised. His voice rolled through the chamber like thunder. You thought truth would save you, human, but truth is fragile. Easily crushed, Riker stepped forward, chains dragging, weapon clutched in his bound hands. Truth spreads faster than your lies, he snapped. His voice fierce. You can't chain it. And you can't chain her. He glanced at Lyssa, who stirred, her green eyes fluttering open. Drellock's gaze followed, his lips curling. The child is mine. She will scream before the galaxy and beg for chains. Lyssa pushed herself unsteadily to her feet, her small body trembling. Her whisper was soft but clear. I am not afraid of you. The air shifted, a pulse rippling through the hall. Invisible yet sharp, several soldiers staggered, their grips faltering, fear bleeding into their discipline. Drellock hissed, his tail lashing. Enough! He raised his clawed hand and slammed it down. Triggering the energy cages to collapse in sparks, Riker and Nara were thrown free, their chains snapping loose as systems overloaded. Now! Nara shouted, seizing Riker's arm. Fight! The hall exploded in chaos, blaster fire filling the air. Rebels charging in from hidden tunnels, Nara fought like fire, her movements precise and furious. Riker tore through soldiers with raw fury, every strike powered by the memory of chains and cries. And at the center, Lyssa closed her eyes, her small hands clenched. Her voice whispered words older than the stars. Not fear this time, not terror, but courage, pure and unbreakable. The effect rippled outward like lightning. Rebels surged with renewed strength. Guards faltered, dropping weapons, turning on their own. The fortress shook as riots erupted across every level, the truth from the crystal burning on every display. The Hegemony's order crumbled under the weight of defiance. Admiral Drellock roared, his copper scales flaring bright. He cut a path through the chaos, his strength terrifying, his claws ripping through steel. Face me, human, he bellowed, his voice shaking the walls. Riker turned, his blaster empty, smoke rising from its barrel. Slowly he dropped it, fists tightening, and stepped forward. The two clashed in the center of the burning hall. Drellock struck like a beast. Claws slashing, tail whipping, Riker dodged, blocked, fought with every ounce of strength left in him. Each blow rattled his bones, blood running down his face. But he refused to fall, each time standing taller, defiance burning in his eyes. You fight like an insect, Drellock hissed, slamming him into the wall. You cannot kill an empire. Riker spat blood into his face, snarling, watch me. Before Drellock could strike again, Nara leapt in, blades flashing, her strikes carving lines across his scales. Together, she and Riker drove him back, each blow a spark against a mountain. And then Lyssa's voice rose, trembling yet fierce. Her eyes glowed with a green fire that cut through the smoke. You destroyed my world, she cried, her small body shaking. But you will not destroy us, her gift surged. A tidal wave of courage and rage amplified by every rebel in the fortress. Drellock staggered, his breath catching, his claws trembling. For the first time fear touched him. Riker saw the crack, the fracture in the monster's armor. With a roar, he drove forward, slamming Drellock against the steel floor. Nara struck too, her blade piercing between scales. The Admiral roared, thrashing, but the fire of 3 souls bound by defiance pressed him down. Lyssa's whisper sealed it. Your chains end here. The great Admiral fell, crashing to the floor, his body still, his eyes wide in shock. Silence followed, broken only by the ragged breaths of the survivors. And then the roar of rebels filled the air. The fortress shook not with fear, but with freedom. Hours later, the fires still burned, but the banners of rebellion flew from the towers. Admiral Drellock lay bound in chains heavier than any he had forged. The data crystal had been broadcast to every corner of the sector. The Hegemony's crimes burned into history. And in the command spire, Riker stood with Nara and Lyssa, watching the stars through shattered glass. Nara's hand slipped into his, her voice soft. You fought like a fool, but also like a hero. Riker smirked, blood still on his lip. Heroes are just fools who didn't quit. Lyssa leaned against him, her green eyes weary but proud. We are free, she whispered, as if testing the words for the first time, and in that moment, under burning skies, The ember of one Alaean child became a flame that could never be chained again.